They don't do that to me. When I call an airline to book an airline ticket, they don't ask me my last name and then explain to me that someone's on break and they're going to call me back later. They ask me for my credit card. They take my money. Why aren't we doing it like that? And there was a bunch of things that I started observing and think, why don't we do that?
Welcome to the Leader's Edge podcast. I'm Zach Ewell, content producer here at Leader's Edge. In this episode of our Personal Lines podcast series, Associate Editor Chris Hand interviews Chad King, CEO of King Risk Partners. King shares how his career pursuits led him from professional baseball to insurance, what it was like starting and running a small business, and shares stories of leadership and innovation. Give it a listen.
Okay, we are here with Chad King, CEO of King Risk Partners based in Gainesville, Florida, which is also your hometown. This is a company that your dad founded more than half a century ago, which is must be a little bit of a mind-blowing thing to think about for you. Tell me about growing up in Gainesville, Florida.
My dad founded King in 1974. I was born 2 years later in 1976. I just turned 49 in July of this year. When I was a kid, I listened to my parents talk about insurance at home, and they used big words like premium and deductible, words that meant nothing to me, but I had heard them say many times. When I was a kid, I played sports. I played basketball and I played baseball. I was nominated for Mr. Basketball for the state of Florida. I did not win. And I was drafted to play pro baseball by the Cincinnati Reds my senior year of high school. I was 17 when I graduated, so too young to sign any type of contract.
Wow.
I played first base and I caught a little bit as well.
You were drafted by the Reds out of high school in the 94 draft.
Yes.
But you decided instead to enroll at the University of Kansas.
At that time, you lost your eligibility for the draft if you went to a Division I college. So what I decided to do after high school was go to junior college, and I played there to maintain that draft eligibility. After my sophomore year of junior college, I had a close call with the Kansas City Royals, and I thought I would go higher in the draft. I ended up not going in the draft at all through a variety of circumstances. And my scout, who was from Kansas City, made some phone calls for me to the folks in that area. So he called Kansas and a number of other schools, and I wound up at the University of Kansas.
Tell me about that experience. So you were there for 2 years?
2 years, well, plus a year, a redshirt year that I
Okay.
tore up my shoulder. I tore my rotator cuff and
Oh boy.
my bicep tendon out of the bone and a whole bunch of things. But yeah, so I was there for 2 years and part of a year in the middle when I played part of the year and then got injured. It was a fun experience. I really enjoyed it. We got to travel around and see some of the Midwest and travel a little bit. We played in San Diego, we played UNLV. We traveled around a little bit. One thing that was a lot of fun for me was playing against players who were much, much better than me. And I feel like I've had this experience over and over in life. It's very humbling. However good you are, you make it to a certain level and you meet a bunch of other people at that same level, but they're a whole lot better than you are. And it's this perpetual humbling sort of experience. I played with some guys, or I played against some guys that played Major League Baseball. One guy in particular was National League Rookie of the Year a couple of years after we played against each other in college. And of course, he was, man among boys on the baseball field.
Did you give any thought to pursuing a career in baseball after college?
I had to get honest about, realistically, am I going to be in Yankees pinstripes in a couple of years? As much as I'd love that, do they want me to be on the team as much as I would like to be on the team? And I felt like no was the likely answer there. And you do have options to play in minor league baseball or independent league. People have options. But what I observed from other folks I saw, other kids I saw, is they could postpone this till they were 30 or something like that. But now you're 30, you have no work experience, you've been living on a bus and playing in upstate New York or wherever you are. And is this really the path I want to go down, or do I want to see the writing on the wall and make a different decision? And that's what I decided to do.
Mm-hmm. All right. You then decided to go to work for your dad, who had founded, as we mentioned, you founded your agency in 1974. When you were growing up, was it assumed that you would work for your father one day?
No. Um, my dad passed away in 2015, about 10 years ago. I have always had a great deal of respect for what he built and what he did. As a kid, I had no desire to do that. I wanted to make my own way, and didn't want I didn't want to follow in someone else's footsteps. I wanted to find my own path. And part of that was baseball. And then after that, part of that was pack up and move to Los Angeles and see how that goes. Um, but I had to get honest for the second time after baseball of what does this really look like? And I could have postponed things. I could have stayed in California. I could have taken a job with whoever and that sort of thing. But I really thought about what do I want this to look like longer term, not 6 months from now, but longer term than that. So what I decided to do was move back to Gainesville, go to work at my parents' insurance agency with the aspiration of owning it at some point. I didn't know anything about insurance. I was a consumer. I had car insurance, I had home insurance. That's what I knew. So I moved back. I went to work at my parents' insurance agency. There were about six of us at that time. Three of
Wow.
us were named King, me and mom and dad. Uh, and I learned the business. When you're an agency of that size, you wear many hats. So I've answered the phones and issued certificates and filled out accords and processed renewals. And I've been an agent and made cold calls and gotten stood up and called people to say their claim isn't covered. And whatever someone does in an insurance agency, I've done it. I've done a lot of it. I got my insurance license. I got my CPC when I worked in the business for about 5 years. On December 31st of 2013, I bought King from my dad. So January 1 of 14, I was an insurance agency owner. We were about $800,000 of revenue, about 8 employees at that time. And then it's be an insurance agency owner, be a small business owner, take out the trash and change the light bulbs and meet with the staff and meet with the carriers, all the things that a small business owner goes through. I don't have to imagine what that is like. I have lived it. I know exactly what that's like. Um,
And
I
it was just 5 years from zero insurance experience to running the company.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
What was there a biggest surprise about your new responsibilities once you took ownership?
What I had to figure out was finding my niche. I told my parents early on that the traditional insurance agency model wasn't going to be a fit for me. I don't want to be an agent and have a bunch of clients and play golf and go fishing and whatever people do. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not passing judgment on it. It just wasn't for me. And that's what I was trying to figure out is how does this work for me? How do I build this such that it's fulfilling for me? Because that wasn't what I was looking for.
So what did you want to do differently?
Well, I thought about that and I decided I wanted to build King on three pillars. I wanted to make it a really, really exciting, scalable business and not have that traditional insurance agency model. Again, I'm not judging, I'm not passing judgment. It just wasn't for me. And so I thought about that and I built King on three pillars. The first pillar was operational excellence. I wanted us to be really, really good at what we did. And I felt like I could make some changes to how the business operated. I would observe how other agencies functioned, and it didn't make sense to me. A simple example is the way a lot of small agencies work is they will break up the client list into pieces of the alphabet. And one account manager will have A through M, and a different account manager will have N through Z, or something like that. And then I would see how this plays out, and someone would call in and they would say, "Oh, my name is Malcolm King." And they'd say, "Oh, King, that's K. That's in Chris's alphabet. Chris is at lunch right now. I'm going to put you in Chris's voicemail, and he'll call you back when he gets back." And I would think, when I call a different business, they don't do that to me. When I call an airline to book an airline ticket, they don't ask me my last name and then explain to me that someone's on break and they're going to call me back later. They ask me for my credit card. They take my money. Why aren't we doing it like that? And there was a bunch of things that I started observing and think, why don't we do that? Another one was I started taking inventory of why do people call? And sometimes it was called to get a quote. If they were existing clients, there was maybe 8 things that they called for. They need a certificate, they need to file a claim, they have a billing question, they want to pay their bill, a simple endorsement, sold this car, bought that car, sort of endorsement. There were 6 or 8 things. And what I was finding is the receptionist would take the call, the receptionist would then transfer it to the account manager would answer those questions. And I thought there's a better way to do this. And so we hired some newer folks. We only trained them on those, say, 10 things. And they were the receptionist slash what we called the CRC, the Client Resource Center. They would answer the phone, and the plan was one call resolution. If they need a certificate, if they have a billing question, if it's one of those 10 things, they can handle. Whoever picks up the call without putting you on hold can solve your problem, and you're on your way. And then those account managers that got paid more could focus on the more complicated things like remarketing a renewal or a workers' comp endorsement or whatever the more cumbersome things were. But if someone called in and said, "Hey, are you guys open on Monday? It's a holiday at the bank. Is it a holiday for you?" That never went to an account manager. "I'm at this traffic light. Which way do I turn to find your office?" That never went to an account manager. All of these things. And we got more and more efficient, and we got better. And 2 years later, we won our first best practices award. We won that 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. By 23, we had outgrown the award. We were about $35 million. The top revenue category there is 25 million. And in 21, the 10th ultimate year we won it, we were number one for our revenue size in the country. We were considered a top performer. So yeah, for me, it's bigger than just a best practices insurance agency. It's really a best practices business that has everything to do with people. The people are the magic. Tools are as good as the hands that hold them. There's a variety of ways of saying it, but that's the magic. If you want to buy an insurance policy from Progressive, you can buy that many, many places. Why does someone buy it from King? And the answer is the people.
So tell me about that. You mentioned that I asked you to send me a bio, and part of what you wrote was talking about, I guess, your own business philosophy. You said this is a relationship business and the people are the magic. Tell me about that. What do you mean by that?
The people are what separates one agency from another. In some businesses, it can be about product or price. With insurance, it can't be about that. If you want to buy a policy from Progressive, it's the same product, it's the same price wherever you go. So then why? Why do they pick one agency over another? And the answer is the people, the culture, the people, the service. It's a different ways of saying different things. A saying I heard recently, someone said they make silk purses out of silk. And I thought that's a great way of putting it.
So it's been now, 11 years, since you took ownership.
Yes.
You have, created a very different company than what you, took over.
Yes.
Tell me about, how did you figure out, you knew you wanted to go in a different direction. How did you figure out which direction or directions to go and how to do that?
I started out by thinking, what are my goals? And I had to get really honest with myself about what are my goals, and whether that was a financial goal or some other type of a goal, to be really honest and clear about what are they. And so one of those goals was financial. And I started thinking about what does this look like if I'm successful financially? And when I started looking at it through that lens, it became very apparent what was the right path and what was the wrong path. If my goal is to make $100,000 a year, I should make more cold calls and go on more appointments and have more clients, and I can do that. And even if it were 200,000 a year, if my goal is $100 million a year, well, there's no amount of cold calls that's going to get me there. There's no amount of going on a. So right there on the face of it, I know more cold calls is not the answer here. I don't know what the answer is quite yet, but that's not the answer.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And as I thought through some of those things, I started looking at acquisitions. In the beginning, the way that I did it, because I didn't have a lot in the way of resources, whether that was financial resources or other resources, I had to be resourceful. And I thought about it, and the criteria, the way that I decided to pursue in the very beginning was, if someone had a website, if they could afford a website, then they were too big for me to acquire. They were too complex and had too much money. So then the question becomes, how do you get in touch with an insurance agency if they don't have a website? So what I would do is I would Google all of the insurance agencies in a given county or zip code or something like that that was near Gainesville. And then I would look for, are there websites? Is it just a listed ABC Insurance without a corresponding website? And if there was no corresponding website, then the next thing I would do is I would go to a website for a carrier like Progressive, for example, because a lot of people, most everyone has Progressive. Then if I went on the Progressive website, I could find the Get a Quote tab, and I would get a quote from that agency. But rather than getting a quote, I have a Ford F-150 and I want insurance, I would say, my name's Chad King. I own King Insurance in Gainesville. I'd like to talk with you about buying your insurance agency. If you're interested, let me know. Here's my phone number, here's my email, etc. And I could get through to these people, because if you're a small enough agency like that, it's likely that the owner of the agency is on the receiving end of that message. And that worked. That worked within a couple of months. I was setting out to acquire one agency and I had 2 hits, if you will. And the first lady was in the county south of Gainesville. And I met with her and we came to terms and everything was great. And then around that same time, a second lady came along and she was ready to go. And I didn't have the money to do both. And so the second lady, I told her the only way I can do this is if we do it on a split. Every dollar of revenue that comes in, I'll pay you half of it. And we'll do that for 3 years. So it's 1.5 times revenue. But I'm not playing hardball with you or trying to negotiate with you. The truth is, I don't have the money. I can't borrow the money. This is the only way I can do it. And if you don't want to do it, I understand. But that's it. She said, yeah, she would do it. So I wound up buying 2 agencies in the same month, sort of on accident. And then from there, it picked up, but I was using banks. And as time passed at the SBA, and once I got a little bit of momentum, and once I could pay down my mortgage, I was able to mortgage my house and use that also as a way to come up with some cash to buy these smaller agencies. And if you are betting your house on it, you are pretty confident that you can make this work.
You better make it work, right?
You're going to need to make it work. You're going to have some explaining to do to the people at home if it doesn't.
That's incentive.
Yeah.
That was Associate Editor Chris Hann interviewing Chad King. I hope you enjoyed it. For more episodes of our Personal Lines podcast series, go to leadersedge.com.